Always true.
It's been almost 2 years since Israel started its war on Gaza. The relentless bombardment has led to unprecedented loss of civilian life and destruction of entire areas. Aid agencies warn famine is now happening. A UN fact-finding mission has found that Israel has committed genocide. This is the most authoritative UN finding to date. And Israel, as a UN member state, could face legal consequences if it fails to act. I am Hashem Ahelbarra in Geneva, and this week I will be speaking to Navi Pillay, the chair of the UN Independent International Commission of Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel, about the Commission's findings and what needs to happen next. All of this as Navi Pillay talks to Al Jazeera. Navi Pillay, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. You've been extensively investigating the situation in Gaza since 2023. Has Israel committed genocide?
This commission has prepared a number of reports. The latest report, which has now been made public, determines that genocide is occurring and is being done by the state of Israel. That's our conclusion. Genocide has been committed and is continuing to be committed. And it's a statement based on all the facts that are included in that report.
The Geneva Convention, or the Convention on Genocide, mentions 5 acts that constitute genocide. Talk us through the 4 acts that Israel has committed for you to establish that genocide is there.
Obviously, killing is one act, and here the very many civilians have been killed. We document all the statistics as well that we receive from many sources, mainly inside the UN and our own investigation. So there's nothing in our report that we didn't independently investigate and verify. So that's one item on killing, and the others are conditions that are designed to destroy a group, conditions of living.
Basically the causing of a serious bodily and mental harm, they're deliberately inflicting conditions of life calculated to bring about the destruction of the Palestinians in whole or in part. It's really very difficult to go into all those details, which requires monitoring basically every aspect of the situation, which is fast moving in Gaza. Has it been an extremely difficult task for you to go through all those aspects of the...
It was an extremely difficult task for our teams. So much of the material is visual, looking at videos and so on. The Israeli soldiers were very keen to post these, so they took the photographs of atrocities they were committing, including torture. And by the way, torture is one of the elements of this crime. It's deeply moving to go through this, but nowhere near the fate of those who are suffering as a result. So I always put in the victims who went through these is far more. All we're doing is hearing them on the evidence and watching videos of it. We have a very small team, and we found that it has affected them psychologically to look at the horror. It affected me too. You can never forget seeing children amputated and being operated on without anesthetic. How can you ever forget that?
Now that the Commission's report has concluded that genocide is taking place, the first question that comes to everyone's mind, who is responsible?
And that emerges from this evidence and from the statements. Genocide is committed by those who give the orders, although under the Rome Statute, even subordinates who obeyed those orders are also responsible. So it's very important for those fighting on the ground, the soldiers employed by the Israeli security forces, to know how vulnerable they are to prosecution themselves. So individuals are prosecuted. In this case, having looked at all the evidence and the statements, of past acts of genocide and the continuing acts of genocide, we've identified the President, the Prime Minister Netanyahu, and the former Minister of Defense, based on their statements and the orders that they've given. So we have identified individuals. We have not done an investigation of all the individuals involved. I think future work by the Commission will get down to that. We're not dropping anything. Because these three individuals were agents of the state, under the law, the state then is held responsible. So we say it's a state of Israel that has committed genocide.
I saw that paragraph in your report which talks about President Isaac Herzog, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, and the former Minister of Defense, Yoav Gallant, who have incited the commission of genocide, and that the authorities in Israel have failed to take any action against this. Did you at any moment later think about adding other names to the list, particularly knowing that Yoav Gallant was replaced by Israel Katz and that Eyal Zamir became the chief of staff, and that the two other ministers, particularly Itamar Ben-Gvir and Bezalel Smotrich, were quoted oftentimes as inciting violence against the Palestinians?
Yes, we also quote those individuals you named, Smotrich in particular. So this is ongoing work. Like I just said, reaching a conclusion that the state of Israel is responsible is very important. And that's what we've done so far. And we will not stop there. We will go and investigate the individuals. But this is a very serious commission. You know, I chaired it. I'm a judge. We're very concerned about checking all the facts first. So you don't jump to the conclusion unless the facts support that conclusion. So this is ongoing work for the Commission to investigate individuals as well. I learned from the Rwanda Tribunal and the International Criminal Court, where I was a judge, that for ordinary people, the immediate perpetrator is the one they hold responsible. And they feel the injustice if he's or she is walking around freely and not being held accountable. So that's why we cannot overlook the role of individuals who received orders or on their own joined this genocidal campaign.
The world's leading association of genocide scholars, the IAGS, has declared that Israel is committing genocide in Gaza. Do you see this as an emerging consensus and no longer a controversial thing that is always going to be dismissed, particularly by Western countries, the fact that Israel is committing genocide?
I do see the emerging consensus because we're all witnesses to what's happening. People on the streets in my city, Durban, have said to me, yeah, well, we know it's going on. We can see it for ourselves. We can see the indiscriminate killing of civilians. I learned from my own experience that I've graduated. I always believed only a court of law can determine whether genocide has occurred, because the court has the opportunity to hear both sides, to have witnesses cross-examined. I subscribed to that because I was a judge, but then I came to realize through watching and the investigation and the work done by the team here, how are you going to prevent genocide if you don't follow the risk of genocide? So that's a very important decision that the International Court of Justice gave when it gave as its opinion in response to the question raised by the UN General Assembly to them. They then ordered provisional measures against Israel because they said there is a risk of genocide occurring. That is such a clear finding by a court that it made me understand as well that you're supposed to watch out and be alerted to the risk of genocide happening, because everyone has an interest in preventing genocide.
If you look at the figures of the death toll in Gaza, more than 65,000 killed, according to health authorities, more than 164,000 injured, thousands of missing. Former Israeli Chief of Staff Herzi Halevi said recently that 200,000 people have been killed or injured, and that not once were military operations inhibited by legal advice. Is the sheer number of the casualties in Gaza the main reason you decided this is the most important indication that we're talking about genocide?
The numbers of people killed in other situations such as Rwanda and in this situation is not an element of the crime of genocide. But it is relevant, obviously, because it shocks our collective conscience that such large numbers were killed. And the only reasonable inference is that it was intentional, not accidental. Mm-hmm. That's the importance of having the numbers. And that's why we paid very careful attention to verify those numbers.
Despite the relentless bombardment, Israel has always rejected accusations that it was indiscriminately targeting civilians, saying that it was in fact defending itself against Hamas. How do you respond to this?
Yes, we've noted that's what they say. And we look at the facts, everything points out to the fact that this is not seeking out, this is not defense. Because why would you go and kill so many children? Largest number of children killed, largest number of journalists killed. And we give a graphic account of the attack on the fertility center. It's the only one in Gaza. And killing of embryos, deliberate firing of that standalone building, and killing, the smashing of those nitrogen tanks that supported the eggs there, the fertilized eggs and so on. I'm just giving you an example of the kind of evidence that does not support a defensive position. It doesn't defend, there's no need at all. So the criteria in the law is your reaction to anything has to be proportional and not indiscriminate. It has to serve a particular purpose.
The entire world is looking at what is happening in Gaza, but there's also the West Bank and East Jerusalem. What did you find there?
We haven't had an opportunity to, but we're determined to do that. We're not confining ourselves to Gaza. We've, in fact, already started gathering evidence of where, to me, the only reasonable inference in those situations also is a genocidal intent. But we're still working on that.
If you look at the Israel, for example, has recently approved the controversial West Bank project, settlement project, known as E1, which would effectively cut off the West Bank from East Jerusalem. Do you see this as something that could undermine or end any hope for establishing an independent, viable Palestinian state?
I think it threatens that. The majority of states support the two-state solution, whether it's feasible or not. I like that the ICJ addressed that and even ordered that. Everybody wondered, so what do you do with the settlers? They settle there. ICJ made it clear that all that is unlawful and has to be dismantled. And there must be restoration of the land to Palestinians in those areas.
Many aid agencies, including the ones that are backed by the UN, confirmed that famine was taking place. What did you find? Do you think that starvation was used as a weapon of war to force people into submission?
So we heard that accusation. We heard many experts and writers write that very phrase, that starvation is deliberate, it's a weapon of war. And so we examined the evidence and found plenty of evidence in support of that. So we also join in that conclusion that starvation and killing of people at the centers where they went, and particularly with this Gaza Humanitarian Foundation. So we have noted, even in this report, the number of people who were killed when they were just seeking food. I think there is sufficient evidence, in my view, that starvation was used as a weapon.
Those killed, by the way, near the sites of GH
Yes.
which is the Gaza Humanitarian
Yes.
Foundation, is almost 1,000 people. Is there any responsibility over this particular case? Does GHF hold any sense of responsibility? This is taking place near the vicinity of its own facilities?
Well, we're still investigating that. At the moment, our focus is on the responsibility of the State of Israel that made the pronouncements in the first place. And also, we count under starvation the immediate withdrawal of supply of food, water, medicines. The hospitals can't treat people. So it's not just starvation, it's a wide variety of activities and withdrawals that Israel has made. We've factored all that into that phrase about starvation and deprivation of food, medicine, water for people.
Now, after the conclusions of your report, the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, is currently considering a case brought by South Africa against Israel that argues that Israel is committing genocide. The court has not yet made a decision. It has given Israel an extension until January 2026. You've been a judge for many years. If you were sitting now on the ICJ as a judge, would you be happy to make a decision on the South Africa case based on what you know and what you've seen in the course of writing your report?
Right, so it's not proper for someone who's not there and is asked to speculate. Yeah, I'm also a judge on that same court as an ad hoc judge in the Myanmar matter, so I won't venture there. I am satisfied as I look at not only the evidence we've documented in this report, but our ongoing work, that there is sufficient information on hand for South Africa to prove its case.
Let me put it this way.
Yeah.
Do you think that your report would provide the ICJ with enough material to say, wait a second, now I have an independent commission which came out and said there is genocide, therefore I need to look deeper into the case, trigger it once again, and come up with a decision? Should this be the normal course of things? From a purely legal perspective.
Yes, they will now have the benefit of looking at not only our report, but we, our mandate is to investigate and provide the information for judicial proceedings. Anyway, it could be a state exercising universal jurisdiction. It could be the ICC or the ICJ. And we got such requests, and we have been complying. So we've given thousands of pieces of evidence to the prosecutor of the ICC, and at the request of South Africa and the court itself, we've furnished this information. As to whether there is sufficient evidence to establish that Israel is committing genocide, yes, so it's for that court to decide, but I often am troubled about where will the court get this information from, where. Because Israel has stopped NGOs, very well-known NGOs, from collaborating with these institutions, providing evidence, being a witness. They've just closed all these NGOs. That would have been the source for the prosecutor to investigate. And this is why we were extraordinarily careful to verify every piece of information. I don't know what will be sufficient. That's for that court to decide, sufficient evidence. But I think that this report, if they rely on it, will be very useful. I'm not overlooking the fact that in giving their legal opinion, the court did rely on our previous report.
Judges of the International Criminal Court, the ICC, issued an arrest warrant for Benjamin Netanyahu and former Defense Minister Yoav Gallant. Do you think that the list could potentially be expanded if they read your own report?
Yes, it can, potentially. This report and the further investigations we are going to be doing on individuals. As I said, we didn't have the opportunity to investigate individuals, but that's what a criminal court is interested in, because they cannot charge a state, they will charge individuals. So we are going to be doing more work on that. We will share that with the prosecutor upon their request.
This is how I see things. Your report is something that could potentially have political and legal implications. We'll talk later about the political implications. Let's stick around with the legal ones. Article 3 in the Genocide Convention states that complicity in genocide is punishable. Does it include countries and companies providing weapons to Israel while the genocide is still taking place?
You know, that was a criticism levied against the Security Council resolution on Rwanda and former Yugoslavia. And people would say to me, who are you putting on trial in the Rwanda tribunal? You are not putting on trial those who manufactured those machetes. Machetes and guns are not manufactured in Rwanda, so somebody supplied them. So who are you prosecuting? It's very important to listen to the questions raised by ordinary people. They are following this. And so your question also is legitimate on who will eventually face trial for these.
How do you feel about the reaction of the international community against the backdrop of what is happening in Gaza, and particularly the role of some extremely powerful Western countries which continue to provide significant financial, political and military assistance to Israel?
Well, I share the concern of all human rights defenders, activists, journalists and so on, who are saying this is the worst possible times that we are going through in respect of having multilateralism, respect for international law, justice and accountability. So people are saying there is one rogue state that is not complying with international law, and yet the other states seem to be helpless in doing something about it.
Do you have any hopes that Israel will comply with the recommendations of your commission, which basically call for an immediate end to the war, a ceasefire to be implemented, end of starvation, and allowing more aid into Gaza?
You see, our call to Israel, which they should heed, every right-thinking person will know, well, let's stop the killings now. You know, they're noticing us, they're reporting on us. So they have to comply. Now, similarly, with the clear warning from the International Court of Justice, they're bound by that decision as well. It's too sad that they've ignored that, defied the ICJ ruling on that. And they have not let the Commission in. We continually write letters to them. Let us know whether you've investigated this, that, and the other. What steps you've taken. We get no replies from them, and they haven't let us into the country. That kind of attitude on their part, they boldly are exercising because they have powerful political support from a superpower in this world that uses its veto as well in the Security Council to protect them. I think that generally, as I talk to other member states, there's serious concerns about that. If one country doesn't comply with international law, and I go so far as to say they're defying international law, then countries are concerned, particularly in Europe, because they are the ones who pressed for all these treaties and conventions and compliance. I think that it will alert them to do something about this.
This is the most authoritative finding by the UN. What does it mean for the United Nations Security Council, for the United States of America, and for the EU in particular? They were so divided about how to move forward when it comes to Gaza. What do you think should happen next for them?
Well, I think you're asking me about political solutions. Yeah, I spent a couple of weeks at the university in Palestine, and obviously the students are really, really angry, but nobody seems to want the two-state solution. Some states are still pushing for it. We've already done a lot of work. We're going to do a historical record of what happened in the past. And what the first resolution of the Security Council was, when they, in the 1940s, when they agreed to the separate state for Israel, they also agreed to a state for Palestine. But since then, there's so much of land grabbing on the part of Israelis and settlements that have been built. People have said the demography has changed to such an extent that it's not possible for a two-state solution. Mm-hmm. And that's why I like the decision of the ICJ on that. It's very firm about that you have to end the unlawfulness, restore to Palestinians what had been taken away from them.
Everyone was hoping that a day will come when this war will come to an end, and that the key player, we're talking basically about Qatar and Egypt, will play a significant role in putting together a settlement between, or a deal between Hamas and Israel. But Qatar was recently targeted by Israel. Do you fear that this could lead to a protracted cycle of violence in the entire region, or could at least delay the potential for any deal as far as Gaza is concerned?
I see now one state not heeding any warning, even from the courts, being supported, receiving arms and ammunition from other countries, and we're going to be investigating that in particular. Other states are complicit in continuing this war. There have been calls for ceasefire that have been ignored. So, you know, I'm not a politician, I'm just the judge, and our call is always to obey the law. We have enough laws and treaties and conventions adopted by all states, including Israel, including United States. I see that as a safeguard. Sooner or later, they have to implement those laws. We have to return to multilateralism. The United Nations is not going to disappear. It's flawed in many ways, but it's the only mechanism we have. So through the United Nations, if we all work in our particular areas, as this commission has done, we're moving towards solutions here and an end to that conflict.
Navi Pillay, Chair of the UN Independent Commission of the Inquiry on the Occupied Palestinian Territory, including East Jerusalem and Israel, thank you for talking to Al Jazeera. I really appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for this chance.
Thank you.